Anybody you can talk about in history that had to do with the Northwest, they were here. Whether it was Native Americans, Lewis and Clark, Hudson Bay, Oregon pioneers, everybody going east, they all came through here and they all had some story.
What's it feel like to keep that legacy alive?
Oh, yeah, it is cool.
You're kind of like a local legend around here.
Okay.
I hear. So I've been here about 24 hours, and I've heard a lot about you around town already. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background here in Cascade Locks?
Okay, yeah, I've been here all my life. So my family came in the late 1800s to here. So we've got 4 generations that have been here in town. Came from Basketball, Wisconsin, and a mill started up here from La Crosse, Wisconsin. So the Northern Pacific came through in the late 1870s, and then the mill people followed them, timber people followed them. So one came out from La Crosse, Wisconsin, set up a big mill right here in Cascade Locks, and then my family must have followed, I'm assuming, I don't know, followed it out. Uh-huh. The family was, hard working, hard drinking, hard fighting folks. That's pretty much the background that we came up with. Yeah. The generations now aren't that way, but that's how it was. It was just hard work. So my grandfather and great grandfather, both of them, ran wood scows. So they'd take the slab wood from the mill, and they'd cut it cord length and load it on barges with big sails, big canvas sails on them. They could load up over 100 cord of wood, and they'd set sail to the Dalles. So for the Dalles has very little wood cover. So they take it up there for the steamboats and for the community and all that. So they just constantly moved these wood barges up and down the river. Mm-hmm. So from that, my dad stayed here, and he did tons of things. He worked in the woods. He trapped in the wintertime because the woods weren't going on in the wintertime, and then he got on as a lineman. We have our own power company here in Cascade Locks. And so he got on as a lineman, retired from that. And the rest, I got 2 brothers and 2 sisters. And and all of them live, within driving distance of us here. Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned your family history is pretty goes pretty deep here in Cascade Locks.
Yeah.
Back then, so it was the late 1800s when your family moved here?
Yes.
How did the river look a lot different back then?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. So late 1800s, in that time, the river would have been considered in 3 sections. You would have an upper river, a middle river, and a lower river. And that was set up pretty much by the steamboatmen because they were the transportation until the railroad came in, until roads came in after that. But prior to all that, it was the steamboatmen heading up and down this river. And you had the Cascade Rapids, which started right here and ran down to Bonneville Dam, a massive rapid system the boats couldn't get through. They could get through the lower, there were 3 rapids. They get through the lower, the middle, but could never get through this upper rapid until they built a navigation lock. So this was the middle river. You portaged around it to a boat that ran here in the middle river, and it ran to the Dalles or Slatla Falls. And then you had to portage around Slatla Falls, and then you get on boats. By the late 1850s, you could make it all the way to Lewiston. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is they had discovered gold. So they had a huge gold rush up there. So all miners were coming out of California, 1,000 a day, arriving in Portland, and jumping on steamboats, heading to the gold fields. The gold was all coming back downriver via steamboat. Yeah. So but 3 sections and lots of rapids. Above Celilo, lots of rapids. Mm. Between here and the Dalles, it was flat water other than the wind because the mountains over here, a landslide came off of them about 600 years ago, blocked the river. And then the river built up here and it flooded everything behind it. Even though it eventually eroded through it, according to legend, it left the natural land bridge the natives talk about as a great crossover. Then that collapsed, creating the rapids. So there was a blockage here, and Lewis and Clark talks about it, and the river's pretty calm, pretty flat from here all the way to the Dalles. Mm. So, and then once you got below the rapids, you didn't deal with any rapids from there to the coast. So the worst rapids that you could negotiate were the ones from Celilo to Lewiston.
Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you about the locks, but before we get to the locks, Lewis and Clark famously came right through this area. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody came through this place. The way I describe the place, and I don't know how you would describe the pieces of an hourglass, but I treat it like an hourglass. So the sand that's sitting here at the top of the hourglass, they're a long ways away from it. They didn't see each other. They weren't part of anything. Whatever they were doing, there's no relationship to each other. But eventually they come down here right to that neck, and everything's got to go through there. They all know each other. All did the same thing going through there. And that's the way this was, is everybody come from the east eventually had to come through the gorge, because we're the only sea level route through a mountain range on the west coast. So everything came through here, and then once it got through, it fanned up and down the coast, everything from the coast. So this is the only place that, whether it was Native Americans, Lewis and Clark, Hudson Bay, Oregon pioneers, everybody going east, they all came through here, and they all had some story, and they could all relate to the story of trying to get around Celilo or trying to get through the Cascade Rapids. So we're that little thing where all the stories come together.
So in natural history, this is a very significant area, really, because you have the entire gorge here. Just, it's like a natural highway.
Because right now we're at the crest of the Cascade Mountain Range that runs 3,000 to 4,000 feet. So we're right at the top, right at the peak of it, right here. But right now you're about 70, 80 feet above sea level. So we're, again, the only and we are so we're running at sea level through here. Once you get below Bonneville Dam, you're like 10, 15 feet above sea level. It's holding back 70 feet of water. So everybody came through here, but so does all the weather come through here. So the Cascade Mountains becomes this block for weather patterns. Everything moves up through the gorge. By the time it lifts out the level of the mountain and dumps, we get 100 inches of rainfall or more here. You get to Hood River 20 miles east of here, and you're only looking maybe 30 inches or so.
Wow, it's that significant. Wow.
Oh, and then you get to the Dalles, you're almost in desert by the Dalles, and it doesn't take long to get past the Dalles before it's real dry. So it gets dry really quick. So you have this we're almost a rainforest, and in Portland, same thing. They're looking at 30 inches or so in there. They don't get the amount that we get here as it's coming through. So you get lots of lush vegetation there, but as soon as you get beyond 20 miles east of here, it's not less vegetation.
So the locks here, that part of which we're looking at right over here, when were these built, and why are locks significant for the Columbia River?
So everybody, once you're on a boat or once you're in transportation, you want to be able to get there, and the more you have to, or the less you have to handle your cargo, passengers and all that, the better it is for you. So you had the Cascade Rapids here, and you had Celilo. So back in the day, you had to, if you were going to go to Lewiston, you had to travel on 3 different boats. You had to use 2 different portages. So you had to portage around. So that was expensive. That was time consuming. So they eventually convinced the federal government to build a navigation lock here. I think it was put through Congress in the 1870s, and then this was completed in 1896.
Wow.
And what it could do is and it went through this whole process of did we dig it low enough? Had we built it high enough? Because the river, before the dams were here, this river between low water and high water could be as much as 60 feet in a year throughout a season. So that changed how this all went down. So they had to build a navigation lock that could operate in low water periods or in high water periods. And so that kept changing on them because they didn't know what those were. I mean, there was experience because people had been around here doing this stuff since 1850. So by the 70s, they had 20 years of it. But still, even with that, in 1896, a flood came through here that went over the top of all this.
Yeah.
Bonneville Dam holds back 70 feet of water. But that flood still would have buried this park in that one. And they ended up having to build things up a little bit higher after that flood. So it kept changing on them. There was 2 locks, and then what they would do is in low water, they would use the lower lock. So normally it was just 1 lockage, and in high water, the lower one would flood, and they would operate the upper lock. So you're always only doing 1 lockage, but there were 2 locks built in order to handle a low water situation or a high water situation.
That's interesting. So one of them is not visible today because it's underwater. Is that right? Okay.
And it's all cut out of stone. They brought stonemasons in from all over the world. I think in the 1880s there was a census done, and it showed like about there was over 1,000 people in town. About 89% were Irish, so the place was full of Irish, but it was full of people from all over, stonemasons. And what they did is they broke boulders. So when they excavated, right off the bat, within the first few years, they put in their notes that they had already excavated like 600 boulders that they'd set aside to be able to cut for stonework. And then they found a spot out here east of town, a big pile of boulders that they went out and busted them up and brought them. So it was all done. It was all done from local stone in here. Most of it. They did get some. Can't remember where it was from. There was some real important areas down here. I think where the gates hung onto, and those stones were, I think they're granite from somewhere in California.
Okay.
But generally it's all stone from here.
Yeah.
And the gates operated by water hydraulics. They built a reservoir up in the mountains, and then they had a big pipe coming down here and used the water pressure from that to open and close the gates.
And that was all in the late 1890s.
1896 is when it opened up.
Wow.
It wasn't finished until 1916, something like that. But it opened up in 1896.
Yeah. Fascinating technology.
All made from basalt stone from this area. Oh yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about where we are and what we're sitting on?
Well, you're where they would call the wheelhouse. But so there would have been a large wheel in here, and it would have ran cables or lines all the way back to the rudders. And that's why they had, where you see a large wheels, was in order to get leverage. I mean, because you're spinning these lines and having to move your rudders, which have water going over. So they're just not sitting there in the water. The wheel is hitting those rudders. The wash of the wheels hitting those rudders. So they're wanting to stay straight. So you're up here trying to get an advantage on them. So they're big wheels that usually operated here in it. This boat, so the boats of 1850s when boats were starting being built, and there were mostly folks who came across over the Oregon Trail, folks from the Midwest, from the East Coast, where people came from all over the world, basically here to come west. Because a lot of these, when you look at the history of the steamboating out here, the names and the people are from all over the world. They're just not the local folks. They're from everywhere, and so they had plenty of timber in here. They used cordwood, didn't have any coal. There wasn't any coal, wasn't anything out here burn, so they used cordwood. And a cord's 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet. They could burn as much as 40 cord of wood in a day's operation. So these guys, so my great-grandfather and grandfather's jobs were important jobs. These guys really, there was a lot of timber went down here just to fuel these boats. So it ran off of steam, and that steam was generated from all this timber you see around us here. They went after the easiest thing for them to get, and there was plenty of it here. Boats started out like anything. They're transporting people and goods, and so that's where they started out with that, then established portages, and went on from there. Now this boat, what they did is the port of Cascade Locks. My dad was on the port. He was on it for 30 years. And him and the Port Commission, so these are just citizens here in the town. What they were going to do is they were going to build a tramway up to the top of the mountain up in here. And there were folks who didn't think they should be building a tramway up there, so they fought. They had gotten themselves I think it was a $700,000 grant from the federal government to help build that. They got it blocked, and so they said, but they went to the government and said, well, okay, well, let us hang on to that a little bit longer, and they were gracious enough to do that. And then they came up with another idea. Somebody presented them the idea of a paddle boat, and they went, okay. So then they started planning for a stern wheeler. And the neat thing that I find, because I've been around my life, so I love the boat, and I love everything that goes on out here about it. But the people who are involved in it, our steering system was Ray Matthews Marine. Back in the 80s, they were one of the best steering systems in the whole country. They ran ferry systems, they ran their most reliable steering system in the country. Brought in Ray Matthews, and he came in personally. It wasn't like his workers came in. He came in personally to make this thing. Don Hudson was the architect. It was a personal thing for him. Dick Nichols out of Hood River. We wanted to keep the money local. So we went to a yard in Hood River that built barges. They'd never built a tour boat, built barges and tugs and all that. And they got the contract. And Dick Nichols, who was the owner of that company, same thing. It became very personal to him. So all these guys who were involved in the building in the boat were pretty close to the end of their lives. So many of them didn't last long after the boat was gone, but it became a personal thing for them. And this boat has been built. It is built stout. Oh yeah, as far as tour boats go, or as far as I'm concerned, as far as boats are built, this thing is they didn't mind overbuilt. It was $2.5 million back in '83 to build the boat. It was it was pretty. It wasn't finished. The interior was all just like a framed house. It was just all steel ribs, steel decks, and then so '83 is when it came out. But in the later '80s, they finally did the interior once they got making some money.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things they would have liked to have done. They didn't get to do because they ran out of money. But what they did do is they did put together. They didn't scrimp on making a really solid, great vessel.
Yeah.
And it handles. This boat is all about, and that's what I've learned. See, I had no experience. I started as a deckhand when the boat was brand new with no water experience. I ran around in the woods out here and played by the river, but never on boats and all that stuff. So I learned right from here, everything I've learned. And what I noticed was a lot of the early guys had ran twin screws and boats with bow thrust. So they all had this feeling a boat should land a certain way. So they'd come over and try to land it, and they couldn't. They're having terrible guys with license. They could have had a terrible time landing it. So, but eventually we got a guy from Milwaukee, one of those six-packs guy, comes up here and he started, and I would work with him as a mate, and he showed that hey, it's all about wind and current. All you got, you're flat bottom, you have 5-foot draft, you're just a big sail. So use the energy that's around you, whether water energy or wind energy, and all you got to do with your rudders, so I can split the rudders, and what I do with the boat is make a sail out of it in the water, cutting in the water or wind, and I just come up and we got the Union Jack out here on the bow, and we just watch the flag. I get the wind to quarter me a little bit, and what I'll do is I'll just twist the boat back and forth to get the wind on the right way, and it lays in here perfectly. I could come in here, in what a lot of people consider tough winds, and if I'm focused, I'm going to lay it right on there.
Yeah.
Now I do let people come to the wheel. So if somebody's broken my concentration, I'll still get it in there, but it may not be as pretty as when I'm focused. When you're focused, because the wind changes on you. Uh-huh. And if you aren't staying on top of what the wind's doing, the current, it's going to be consistent. In the springtime, it's rolling, and you can use the current some, but come summer, there is no current. It's all about the wind. And the wind, it gusts, it shifts, and so you gotta keep an eye on your flag and be ready. And from a lot of years out in here, I got a pretty good feel for when it's going to shift, when it's going to gut. It's the winds are for that day. I've got how it's going to blow that day. Yeah. So and we get it from the east or the west. East is the strongest one. West, I'll get 20, 30 mile an hour out of the west because you're getting blocked. That ridge out there, that is part of the landslide. So that blocks a lot of the west wind, and the island blocks a lot of west wind. Mm-hmm. But an east wind, we'll get 50, 60, 70 mile an hour. Yeah, east wind can get howling, and that's a tricky one. So an east wind, I just flip the boat. If it's an east wind landing, we turn around. I always put the bow into wherever the forces come, usually the strongest wind. Mm-hmm. So right now I'm set for a west wind. But if we were running out here and had an east wind going, the crew just would spin around and land into the east wind. It'll do because there's a way that'll go, and if you treat it the way and do the things that you're supposed to do on it, it goes into landings great, comes out of landings great. It's great to operate. Yeah.
Amazing. 1850s technology.
But basically,
with modern day engines and
Well, we're diesel electric now. Yeah. We were the first diesel electric stern wheeler built. So we have we started with Cummins. Now we have Cat generators, the straight 6-cylinder 400 horsepower Cat with a 260 kW generator on. We parallel two of them, and then it's AC power we're generating. We changed that to DC for propulsion, And then we have 200 horsepower DC motors driving the wheel through 65 to 1 reduction gear. But yet, it's just wheel and rudders. There's no bow thruster, no propeller. So yes, I got to run this boat just the way they would have run it in the 1850s. So that's the other fun part of it, is because I knew this was a landing. In fact, during the gold rush, you had the Oregon Pony down here. The first steam locomotive in the Northwest is in our park here. And the Oregon Pony was brought in 1862 to move gold dust. That thing was, in today's dollars, that thing was moving over $100 million of gold dust through here a week. So those gold boats were landing right. This is where their landing was. They'd land in here, and the locks weren't here, and they'd put it on the Oregon Pony and portage it 5 miles around the rapids to boats that would eventually work its way down to the San Francisco Mint. So big gold rush, and yeah, all that gold came in the early years. All came right through here on steamboats.
What's it feel like to keep that legacy alive?
Oh, yeah, it is cool. It's cool because those guys, they were king of the hill. Now we're not king of the hill, but those guys were king of the hill. Those guys ran, those captains ran the whole show. Once the boat gets going, I'm the captain. But when the boat's not, when the boat's not going, it's Caden's show.
Yeah.
but once we drop the lines, and once we're on here, it's my show. Yeah. And for those guys, it was pretty much all their show. I mean, they ran. It was their boat, their business. They did the whole thing, and they were super important. I think our importance, in my mind, is the ability to pass along history, the ability to give people what it looks like out here on the water coming through this beautiful, beautiful gorge, and we're in absolutely the best part of the entire gorge. Yeah. So you've got an hour to 2 hour cruise through here, going through the best part of the whole thing, and especially being here at the Cascade Rap, this was historically a real important part. And the same thing, just thinking of anybody you can talk about in history that had to do with the Northwest, they were here. And so when I pulled on in here and doing this, those people, the same thing I'm seeing, the same thing I'm feeling, so did they. Yeah. Because they all had to come through here. First governor of Washington came through here. First governor of California got west coming. They all caught west coming through here initially. So day to day, we get scheduled. I get a schedule from the operations manager of what cruises I'm going to have. So I show up. The first thing you do is you go around and check things out, and make sure everything on the boat is safe, and then you make my way to the wheelhouse. I get things fired up here as much as I can, the 12 volt, the radios, all the things I need here to make sure that they're all working okay before we leave. Then we get ready for boarding, and I head on up, and we usually look at some IDs for passengers as they come on. We take pictures of them as they board. Once we get everybody on the boat, then I follow them on down, head up the wheelhouse, and then we're ready to start going out on our cruises. And our cruises, what we're selling basically is two things. We're selling a historical narrative, and that history includes, Lewis and Clark, some native information, mostly coming from Lewis and Clark talked about. I'm still working on trying to get natives to help with some of that narrative, but we'll do some Oregon Trail. We'll do some, and certainly do the steamboat and a little bit about the locks. And we go down to Bonneville Dams a little bit, and then certainly everything that because anybody who's coming through here, it's always going to be, what's that? And I pretty much know what all the what's that are now, so I make sure that I touch base with all the primary what's that. So anything you can see from shore that looks that they're going to ask about, we would make sure we get them, tell them about that. But for a lot of people, in this day and age where things are, crazy and on the go and all that, it is just a nice little respite from what's going on out there. The wind blows, we get some nice wind through here. We've got beautiful scenery along the way, and all you got to do is you just sit back and take the ride. The later summer goes on, the more when the families get on here, Dad will take a nap. He's been on the go, on the go, on the go, on the go. He doesn't have to worry about it. Everybody's safe on here, so he can sit down and just take it easy. But for the ones who need to do that. But along the route though, he's gonna want to get up and get about. So during the cruise, if people want to come to the wheelhouse, we allow them to come to the wheelhouse and take a look around.
That's got to be an amazing experience.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. I grew up here. So this is all I know. Mm-hmm. And so it amazes, and I wasn't a great student. I was I didn't I didn't do all that well out there, but I'm a hands-on guy though. So so for me, when I came on here, I know I learned more history out here than I did in school, because a lot of the history I got in school was what was going on all the rest of the world. They didn't really focus a lot on what was here. So I started reading Lewis and Clark, started reading Oregon Trail. So people wrote about things, and I'm going, yeah, I know right where when they talk about a spot or talk about something, I'm going, I know where that's at. And so when I'm doing it, it's easy for me to, and it's fun to tell the story. Mm-hmm. And I put myself in there. And usually what I'm trying to do for the customers, and that's what I'm constantly doing that, because I still change a little bit. I'm trying to give them a wow moment, something I think's going to wow them. Mm-hmm. And so whatever I can find about any of those things along the route here that I think is going to wow somebody, I try to make sure I touch base with that.
So can you tell me about some of the jobs you've had in town?
Well, I grew up here, so I've done a number of things. What did my first paying job was at the bridge side, which is now the Charburger. I was the busser, the dishwasher, and yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I was one of their best ones.
Yeah, I believe it.
In fact, in high school, we played 8-man. I was K through 12 here in the school. It's not anymore. Now it's just a grade school, but it was K through 12 when I was growing up. We played 8-man football. So I had a coach finally one year, because I was lineman size, but he let me be a back. And the first time I got he made this special play for me. The first time I got it, I went for a touchdown. And the owner of the what was the Charburger then? Yeah, he said, yeah, you learned that. You learned that speed and have those moves from working up.
That's it.
Working up here at the restaurant. So I worked there. I tried college for a year, played some football at Eastern Oregon, and had some fun. Had fun with that, but I didn't learn a whole lot. And finally came back, and I had bills to pay because I got a guaranteed student loan. So I got on at a lumber mill. They had a big dimension lumber mill here. So I got on the lumber mill, and while I was at the mill, I learned what they did back then when I first got on the mill is they would take every couple hours, they'd take a 10, 15-minute break. And it always take a 15-minute break always cost them a half hour or 45 minutes to get guys out of there, get them. So I went around on my own, and I started learning all the equipment. And so then the foreman came and said, hey, I'm going to make you the brake man. So now the mill just kept running, and I'd go around and give everybody their brake, because I knew how to run all the equipment. So I'd go down, and so now there wasn't just one time of braking. You had, sometimes you got an early break, sometimes you got a late break, but everybody got their break, and the mill never shut down. But finally, a buddy of mine had a gas station down here in town, and I was just sitting there with him. He says, hey, why don't you take this other gas? I got another gas station up there. Why don't you take it? And I went, okay. So I borrowed $900 from my folks to buy the gas that was in the ground at that time. I gave 2 weeks at the mill, and I was running a gas station. It was Arco back then, a little Arco station. So I ran that for quite a while, and finally it was. Well, I grew up here, so I knew everybody. So when I first did, I was really making bank, and I was working. I was the only one working. 15, 16 hours a day. I'd run from open and close, and finally I decided to start hiring people. But then I also, because everybody knew me, started getting people to charge. And after a while, and a lot of people couldn't. I let them go to the limit. I let them go too far to where they couldn't even afford to pay me back. So yeah, I was losing a ton of money there, and I finally going, you know what? I'm not a businessman. I'm heading out of here. So I looked into getting at Yellowstone or Yosemite, and they wanted college people. But I had a kid showed up there, and he was from Lake Tahoe. He said, I can get you on as security guard at Harvey's Resort Hotel Casino in Lake Tahoe. And sure, he called down there, and they said, send him down. So I sold the station to my dad, jumped in the truck, and headed to Lake Tahoe.
Wow.
So I worked a couple of seasons there, but same thing, in a small town, you do a lot. I was a Boy Scout master. I was the Lions Club president for a while. I coached all kinds of things. I was assistant coach over at the high school in football and basketball. So I got doing so many things that's so with the station I'm going, I don't have a life. So I said, and I can't say no. So I'm just bailing. Sold that to Dad. Went to Tahoe and met my wife at Tahoe. She moved up here with me, and she's been here 40-some years. She's in Napa, California. Yeah. And actually, before I got on the boat, though, so when I came back from Tahoe, there was a steel mill here in town, and I was working at it was a small one. They made parts for drilling rigs, and so we were knocking that out. That was a nasty. Come home, just nostrils just black. Even no matter what you did, it was a hard, hot, heavy duty job. And they were training me to be the furnace man, so that was to be one of the main guys in it. But then one of the guys, our heat treat guy, didn't do a good job treating them. They went in the field, they failed, so the companies stopped buying from them. And they only had one product they were making, so they went bankrupt. And as soon as they went bankrupt, the boat started. So then I got on the boat as a deckhand and been here ever since. Other than the port ran it for 23 years, and then once they got rid of it, I went to work for the Port and Spirit. Well, they only wanted me part-time. So fortunately, but not long after that, the port said, hey, we'll need somebody here in the park. So I got on park maintenance, mowing and watering the park here. So nowadays, I do park maintenance and the boat to supplement my income to be able to stay in a nice small town.
Uh-huh. And you were mayor here, weren't you?
Yep. Yeah. I was mayor. I don't know what years I was mayor, but I think I was mayor for 10, 11 years.
Oh, wow.
One of the longer running mayors.
Yeah.
They were in here. So I was mayor during the 50,000 acre Eagle Creek Forest fire that went through. So we had to declare emergency for that one. So that was a tricky time. And I was here for the pandemic. I was mayor then, so I had to declare emergency there and deal with that. So yeah, but I'm done. Yeah, I'm done with all that stuff. When you are a public servant, the public can be sometimes pretty tough on you because you can't make everybody happy, no matter what. So yeah.
But you can as a captain.
Yeah, but you can as a captain. You are right there.
Make it back to the dock. That's all you got to do.
All you got to do is get back to the dock. Yeah, and give them out and give them a show out there. Yeah. And we also do, we do the excursions, but we also do meal cruises. So when the boat can be chartered, so we can do weddings on here. There's anything you can imagine doing somewhere. We can do that on here. So our bread and butter is going doing the excursions during the day, but so what helps keep us moving is the meal cruises. And the new company, Jetty Light, is the Port of Cascade Locks ran this for 23 years. The Port and Spirit ran it for 16, 17 years. And now Jetty Light has it. And so one of the new things they've added to it, they call it the Whiskey Wheeler, which is why have the boat just sitting here on beautiful evenings, beautiful sunsets. Mm-hmm. So when we get back from a dinner cruise, they just do a dockside thing here where you can watch the sunset. You can, and usually in the evening the winds are dying down, so it's just when you're looking at location, everybody's looking at property and things. It's location. We have got the location.
You definitely do.
And Jetty Light gets that, and they're going to take advantage of that any way they can. Mm-hmm. They wanted to do some stuff here, where they could do some social media out there. So what I came up with is to do Captain Tom on the Go. So what I'll do is I'll go somewhere in the morning before I have a cruise, and I'll do a little show and we stay within a minute. It's got to all stay within a minute, and I'll do it somewhere, and then when it ends, we'll always say, got to go, can't miss the boat. So So the name of the game is to keep getting myself further and further away to where it's harder and harder to get to wherever I'm at. It's harder and harder to get there. So I try to go to interesting places. I'll go to so stay tuned this year. I don't know where I'll go to. I'll go to a lot of the places I went last year because they were cool places. And I'll do a lot of things I did last year. But but I'm going to go. I'll figure out more places to go to, and I'm going to try to get it stretched out there where it gets harder for me to make it here on time for my for my cruise. So that's the name of the game. Go somewhere and then let them know that wherever I'm at, if you're there, if I get to the boat, you can get to the boat.
No excuses. Right?
That's right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Captain Tom, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
One more time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks,
One more
appreciate
time.
it. I've only got 11 minutes left on this one.
Well,
This one eats
I'll
up.
eat that. I'll eat that up. I'll eat that up in the introduction.